各位而家咧就夠法定人。
Colleagues, we have formed a quorum. Let's call the meeting of the housing panel to order. First of all, confirmation of minutes of the meeting held on October the 16th. As of now, the Secretariat has not received any proposals for amendment. Shall we confirm the minutes? All right, thank you. Minutes confirmed. Item 2, information papers issued since the last meeting. The Secretariat has issued the following papers. CB bracket 140/12 to 13 bracket 01 is a paper from the administration, then Registry Statistics in September 2012. And the second, CB bracket 182/12 to 13, referral arising from the meeting between duty roster members and the so-called grassroots housing concern group on May the 28th regarding the rehousing of tenants affected by clearance of subdivided flats and the administration's response. Item 3, items for discussion at the next meeting. On the 25th of October, both myself and the Deputy Chairman had an informal meeting with the Secretary for Transport and Housing on the program for this year. And after discussion with the Secretary, we have now come up with an initial plan. And all the issues have been reflected in the list of outstanding items for discussion that has been issued to members. And the next regular meeting will be held on the 3rd of December, is a Monday at 2:30, and the administration has proposed to discuss 2 items. Number 1, the creation of the directorate post for the authority to be established to implement the Residential Properties First-Hand Sales Ordinance. And number 2 is about the performance of the environmental protection targets and measures for 2011 and 12. So, any comments on that? And also, just a reminder, on the 9th of November, Friday, 9:30 to 12:30, we are going to have a joint panel meeting with the development panel on the initiatives announced by the Chief Executive on the 30th of August 2012 with regard to the short, medium to long-term housing policies. So, members are reminded to attend that meeting. All right, any further questions on that? Dr. Fernando Cheung. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning the 2 items being proposed now, number 1, the creation of directorate post for the authority to be established. I don't think that would be controversial because it's just a routine matter, going through the motion so that we will be consulted first. And I think a more pressing issue would be subdivided flats, and the Secretary just paid a visit to one of those flats recently. And also in May last year, we also received a referral from SOCO, and they came to see us at the complaints division. It's about subdivided flats, and basically it's about the rehousing of tenants affected by clearance of subdivided flats. And today we have also received this territory-wide concern group on subdivided flats. So I think we should set aside more time to discuss this issue. I suggest that at the next meeting we should have this additional item. Yes, Dr. Fernando Cheung, what you said was indeed brought up by myself and KK Fong at our meeting with the Secretary, and it's been included as item 23 on the list of outstanding items for discussion. As regards whether we should discuss it at the next meeting, we can reflect that to the administration. It depends on whether or not the administration is ready to take it up with us. Chairman, I believe that this council should have its independent say on whether an item should be discussed, and if we believe that this is an important item and if it's an item of public concern, then the administration will have to respond to the request by the council for an item to be discussed. And of course, Chairman, as Chairman of the panel, you have the discretion to decide if an item should be discussed. But then, so long as this council or panel members agree that this is an important subject that warrants early discussion, then the administration will have to tie in with us. So it's not we who should be tying in with their efforts. I think they should. It's a two-way street, and they should also strive to cooperate with us. Well, I've already made an effort to do that, and it depends on the response from the administration. Next, Christopher Chung. Chairman, I propose that for overcrowded households, I think we haven't yet got any timetable as to when that will be discussed, and it's giving rise to a lot of problems. So during the second or third quarter, can we discuss that? Because basically for Q2 and Q3, well, the two items on the list are just progress reports. I think they are just there to consult us on our views and so on. Mr. Chung, I know it very well. We've been striving for an early slot for that, but then the administration said that it's not possible to discuss it within this year. What are the reasons? Well, they said that they had to make preparation for that. We repeatedly made that request, but then they said that they would need more time. All right. Yes, of course, I can take it up again with them. Yes, Dr. Joseph Lee. Thank you, Chairman. On this particular item, I'd like to raise the subject of rent control, because during the last term we have repeatedly raised that, but then to have it formally discussed at the housing panel, we have not done that yet. And Dr. Jiang or Professor Jiang also said that there would be no rent control whatsoever. And even under the LTHS document, there is no mention of it. But then rents are escalating, and I think it's a 10-year-old problem, and we should take it up again. So whether it's next time or later on, we should discuss it as soon as possible with the administration. Thank you, Dr. Joseph Lee. What you said was very clear to both me and KK Fong, and we have also raised it or brought it up with the Secretary, even though the Secretary said that there would be no review whatsoever, but then we have already made it clear that we would like to have a discussion. So we hope that that will be included in this year's agenda, including Christopher Jung and the other members. I think the three items that you said were already brought up by us at our meeting with the Secretary. We hope to be able to discuss those within this year. Okay, without further ado, let's invite the administration team to join us.
間你哋喺傾過本會議嘅第二個議程。
And when we discuss the issue of LTHS, long-term housing strategy, you may wish to raise the issues that you just raised again with the administration. All right, let's invite the Bureau Director and his team to be seated first. Bureau Director, I'm sure in the waiting room you must have heard that members would like to discuss three items as soon as possible. Please do think about it. Yes, Chairman. Overcrowded households, rent control, and subdivided flats. So please do consider them. All right, let's move on to the first item for discussion at this meeting. Extending the home ownership scheme secondary market to white form buyers. We have two papers. One is LC paper number CB bracket 1 107 stroke 12 to 13 bracket 02. Another one, FSO 7 stroke 12 to 13. So would the administration take us through its paper first? Yes, this is the first regular meeting of the Housing Panel, Chairman. Even the last week we attended the joint panel of the FAP and HP. Well, this is the first regular meeting of the panel. I'd like to take the opportunity to say a few words, and then I'll defer to my colleagues who will brief you on the paper. Yes, in the past, on different occasions at this council, the administration has already indicated that with regard to the private property market, both in terms of property prices and rentals, they've already escalated to a level in excess of the peak in 1997. And with the exuberance in the market, many members of the public have found it very difficult to buy their own flats, and also for applications for PRH flats, the number has also skyrocketed. That's why the administration is fully aware of the fact that housing problems are very closely related to people's livelihood, and the administration will be adopting a multi-pronged approach in terms of a supply and also control of demand. We will try our best to do more in order to reach the indicator or the pledge made by the chief executive during his election. We understand that with a short supply of housing, that's one of the core issues at present in the property market. That's why we have announced a series of measures recently, for example, on the expansion of the HOS secondary market so that white form buyers will also be able to buy those flats. And also on the 13th of August, the chief executive announced 10 initiatives on the medium to long-term measures to ease the short supply in the housing market, and we will also be reviewing the LTHS, and that will be discussed later on today. And we will also be introducing the policy of Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people. And also on the 26th of October, the FS has also announced a number of measures to deal with the exuberance in the property market. With regard to the measures to deal with the exuberance in the market, we've already given an account at the meeting last Friday, and therefore I'll leave that out today. But then with regard to the two other items, that is the HOS secondary market, and that is to extend it to white form buyers, and also the LTHS. My colleagues will be giving you more details in a moment. But then concerning the chief executive announcement of the 10 initiatives in August concerning the short to medium term on land supply, on the 9th of November, there will be a joint panel meeting of the Development and Housing Panel. Will be giving you more details then.
Apart from the measures on supply and management side issues, the administration endeavor to enhance the transparency of residential housing market. Members may be aware that in June this year, during the last term, there was the first-hand residential housing legislation being passed to enhance fairness and transparency of transactions in first-hand residential market. These measures will be implemented as soon as possible. The last administration has undertaken that once the legislation has been endorsed, within 12 months, the relevant authority will be set up to enforce the legislation and implement the measures. Next year, 2013, in April, the bills will come into effect. The relevant authority will, at the same time, start operating. In previous items, we have mentioned that in relation to creation of posts under the authority, matters will be discussed in the relevant panel. We're now making preparations for the establishment of the authority, and at the end, very soon we will make the relevant proposals. I would like to express that we look forward to cooperating with the panel in the coming 4 years to deal with housing issues that is close to the heart of the community. We hope that through cooperation between legislature and executive, we will improve people's livelihood. And I will now ask Mr. Chiu King-chi, the Assistant Director of the Housing Department, to give you a presentation. How much time do you need, Mr. Chiu? Within 10 minutes. Please compress it, because we don't have time for members to ask questions. Thank you. I will use as little time as possible to give you a presentation of the extension of the HOS secondary market to white form buyers. Let me first explain what is secondary market. It was introduced in 1997, the secondary market scheme. It is there to allow owners of HOS flats and TPS, that is tenant purchase scheme flats, to sell their flats without payment of premium to existing or prospective public rental housing PRH tenants. on the HOS secondary market from the third year onwards, following the date of first assignment. For those existing tenants and prospective tenants, we call them green formers. Those with green form status can also purchase flat for sale schemes flats with premium not yet paid under the Housing Society. Under the secondary market scheme, the purchase of flats with premium not paid have to assume the liability to pay the premium upon eventual sale of these flats in the open market. There are currently 250,000 HOS flats, 120,000 TPS flats, and 9,000 flat for sale schemes, FFSS flats, with premium not yet paid currently available, altogether about 380,000 units. We expect the first batch of new HOS flats to be completed in 2016-17. Before the completion of this batch, if we are to help eligible households to purchase flats in this transitional period, we have come up with this interim scheme to allow white farmers to purchase HOS flats with premium not paid. We aim at offering 5,000 quotas a year for white farmers. The quota will be released in two batches, each 2,500 quotas for the white farmers to purchase flats. In terms of quota allocation, there will be two categories, namely families and singletons. 9-1, an allocation proportion of 9-1 between families and singletons will be in place. That is, 4,500 quotas will be for families and 500 for singletons. If there is oversubscription, the quotas will be allocated by ballot. Let's now look at the TPS and the FFSS scheme. Currently, flats under these two schemes can be purchased by green farmers. We now propose to extend such flats to white farmers. White farmers will have to meet income and asset limit, and also meet the requirement of home ownership restrictions. We have used and established a formula based on household expenditure to calculate the income and asset limit. This is the formula. We'll calculate the household expenditure comprising of two parts: first, housing costs and non-housing costs. After calculating the housing costs, we will expand it by 5% as contingency to set the income limit. In relation to income and asset limits, we will make the calculation in general. About one month before invitation for applications, we will take into account the latest economic statistics to keep abreast with the current situation. Ownership restrictions. 20 months prior to applications, applicants are not allowed to own any properties. We've also heard from the community that such buyers should not be allowed to engage in speculative activities in the open market. We have a number of initiatives in place, say for example the special stamp duty, which will curb speculative activities. Yet we still hear voices from the community to ask for additional resale restrictions. We have considered that in order to dispel the concern and worry, under this scheme, we will, by way of an agreement, impose restrictions on white farmers on resale. Once they have purchased a property under this scheme, within 2 years, they are not allowed to resell the property in an open market. They may, in the end, pay the premium and sell the flat in the open market. And let me give you some more information of the condition imposed in an agreement. In the secondary market, white form buyers will first have to apply a certificate of eligibility to purchase before they can sign the provisional agreement for sale and purchase. And at the same time, they have to apply for a letter of nomination before they can sign the agreement for sale and purchase and the assignment. In the process of application for the certificate of eligibility to purchase, we will make it clear that within 2 years the flat will not be sold in a secondary market. That will be in the deed of undertaking. And within that 2 years, we will not issue a certificate of availability for sale. This is a safeguard on 2 levels to ensure that such flats will not be bought and sold in the secondary market. Validity. Currently, the validity of the CEP, the eligibility to purchase, is valid for 6 months. They can be, upon application, extended for another 6 months. If a purchase is not made within 12 months altogether, if it is renewed, then the quota will expire. In the next round, if the person is still eligible, another application can be made through ballot. Well, we have a quota of 5,000, and we aim at opening it for application in January 2013. We will vet the application eligibility and form our priority list. In May, we will announce the list of 5,000 successful applications, and in around May, we will issue the first batch of 2,500 approval letters, and successful applicants will be able to look for a flat. And the second batch of 2,500 will be issued in around December next year. The reason for the 7 years time gap in between is to allow for the 6 months validity period of the first batch. We will wait for 6 months so that the quota, the 2 batches will not be in the market at the same time. So the next round will be approved about 15 to 16 months afterwards. We charge on the recovery of cost basis. We will charge an application fee of $100, which will not be refundable. Successful applicants will have to pay $660 for the issuance of the CEP. Another $660 will have to be paid when the certificate is renewed, which is the same as green formers. We ask members to note the scheme. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chiu. This item is scheduled to end at 3:30, but a lot of members asked to speak. We will first have the first round, 3 minutes, answers and questions included. We have Wu Ji-wei, Frederick Fung, Fernando Chang, and a number of other members. First round, Mr. Wu Ji-wei. Question and answer within 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. First, is this scheme a long term? Because it is mentioned that it's a transitional period till 2016 to 17 when the new HOS flats are available. So is this scheme ongoing and continuous? That is, aside from new HOS flats, this scheme will be there to make available more residential housing in the market too. Would you apply the same criteria on a rental market? That is, white farmers are allowed to rent HOS flats without premium paid in the market to increase availability of HOS flats in the market. Who is to take this question? Currently, for HOS flats, if premium is not paid, it cannot be rented out. So there is no question of allowing white farmers to rent HOS flats with premium not paid. And the other question, in short, whether this scheme is a transitional one. When we first floated it, yes, we see it as a transitional scheme because new HOS flats will only be available in 2016 to 17. Of course, there are about 800 overhang HOS flats that will soon be put in the market, surplus HOS flats that will be soon put into the market. This will further revitalize the secondary market of the HOS flats. At the moment, we haven't thought about what we are going to do after this transitional period. In other words, this is an interim measure before new HOS flats are available in 2016-17. You just now said that you will not consider extending it to the rental market. What is the reason? Because currently, apart from home ownership problems, there is also a problem of rental. So we like to increase the supply in the rental market. So why can't it be extended to the rental market? Secretary, the sale of HOS flats basically is there to help eligible households to fulfill their home ownership needs. When we conceive the idea, we have not taken into account the need for them to rent it out to generate income. So any change will have to be carefully considered.
Next, KK4. Chairman, I have two simple questions first. First, on para 9. Well, within 2 years, they are not allowed to resell their flats in the market again. In other words, if A sells the flat to B, then B cannot sell it again within a 2-year period. But then after 2 years, then so long as he can pay the premium, then he'll be allowed to sell his flat in the open market. Is that the case? And the second question is, has the administration considered this? That is, after the announcement of the program for second-hand HOS flats, the prices have already escalated. So at what level will you find it acceptable? Will you do something about it? Bureau Director, indeed, the current arrangement would restrict the resale of the market, resale of the flat in the secondary market within a 2-year period. Of course, after he has paid the premium, then he will be allowed to sell the flat in the open market. With regard to the launching of this white form scheme and also the impact on the secondary market, yes, of course, I'm aware that in the market there are different views. Some said that with the new package, secondary HOS flats prices have gone up. But then I think, even if there might have been some impacts, the impact are not significant at all because after all, the white form scheme has not yet been rolled out. We have not yet selected the 2,500 eligible applicants, and also with regard to the changes in the market, I think they are subject to different factors instead of just one single factor. Chairman, I'd like to share this view with the administration. Well, for the HOS market is a very stable alternative market when compared to the private property market, and as a result, for the medium to low income families, they are able to buy their own flats in a stable manner. They are not susceptible to the volatility or speculative activities in the market. But once it's opened up, then speculation can go into secondary HOS market. And I do not agree to that, and I'm also strongly against it. I think the hardship of many people in the community is that with high property prices, many other prices have also gone up, but then this should have been a stable market, but then you're opening it up, and as a result it's also sustainable or susceptible to speculation in a market. Yes, well, indeed, you have not increased the supply. It's just that they've sold their first-hand properties for second-hand properties, and what you should have done is to increase supply. Only then will you be able to meet the demand. But then you're actually extending this market to the speculative activities in the private property market. So have you thought about that? Your time's up. Dr. Fernando Cheung. Thank you, Chairman. The original intention of the HOS, one of the biggest functions, is to allow PRH tenants, once their means have improved, then they'll be able to buy HOS flats, and then they'll be able to surrender their PRH flats, so that for those in need, they'll be able to get housing in the public rental housing, and for PRH tenants to be able to buy their own homes at a relatively low price. But then for the white form scheme, to a certain extent, you're actually encouraging speculation or fueling speculation. As you can see, for green form applicants, actually, some of the prices have gone up to over $7,000 a square feet. Yes, you might think that there are a basket of factors attributing to this, but then if you look at the prices of HOS flats, they are already beyond the affordability of the ordinary public. That being the case, for the 5,000 units for white form buyers, you're actually increasing the number of buyers by 5,000, and then property prices will go further up. And we're referring to HOS flats. So does the administration have other means to curb it? Number one, if you really want to help the public, if you do not increase the supply, then it's not going to help at all, because you're just increasing the circulation. Because there'll be 5,000 more buyers, you're actually encouraging them to enter the market. And then for those who have bought these flats, they might have to enter the market again, because they will have to buy their flats, because they after all have to have something above their head. And therefore, you're actually fueling the market. So do you intend to increase the supply then? And also for the HOS flats prices, in some cases, they have already gone beyond $7,000 per square feet. In most cases, it has already gone up to over $5,000 per square feet. So how are you going to increase supply? And also for the resale restriction, can it be increased to 5 years instead of 2 years? That would stabilize the market. Would you be prepared to think about it? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Well, under the HOS scheme, since its launch in the 70s, there have been many changes. And on the one hand, the intention is to allow those PRH tenants to buy HOS flats, and then they will then be able to surrender their PRH flats for those on the waiting list. But then on the other hand, that would also give chances for those who are not currently sitting tenants of PRH flats, but then so long as they can meet the asset and income limit, then they'll be able to buy HOS flats under the white form scheme. So the original intention of the HOS scheme is to respond to the two types of demand that I just mentioned. Of course, where there is this secondary market, we have to confine them to PRH tenants. But then during the last 2 years or so, there have been a lot of discussions in the community, because without the new supply of HOS scheme, we have to have some new supply of flats in the market. That's why we have come up with a scheme. And as I said, this is just an interim scheme. We hope to ease the demand by some white form buyers. Next, concerning the white form secondary market, the first time that I heard it, I was approached by some residents. They asked me whether the administration is trying to fuel the secondary HOS market, so that for those living in PRH flats, if they want to buy an HOS flat, they will not be able to afford it. That is indeed the case, because not only is the private property market being very exuberant, even for secondary HOS market is also very exuberant. The administration must understand that, if I were a PRH tenant, then at present I would already be able to buy an HOS flat without paying the premium. And if I'm not a PRH tenant, then I will still be able to buy it, because after 3 years, it will be able to enter the open market, and then I'll be able to buy it so long as I'm prepared to pay the premium. And now, with the launching of this scheme, well, for those who would have been able to buy these flats with payment of a premium, then they will be turned into green form buyers. And for the existing green form buyers who would have been able to buy these HOS flats, there will be further competition, and therefore PRH tenants have this repercussion, because originally they had intended to buy these HOS flats, but then they will no longer be able to afford it. According to Christopher Chong, seated next to me, he said that in the Eastern District it might cost some $3 million a flat, and even in Tin Shui Wai the prices have also gone up. So how can they afford it? Well, for PRH tenants, if they want to move up the ladder, they will not be able to do it. So you have done it with all good intentions, but then you have never considered the plight of PRH tenants. So I have 2 questions for you. Number 1, why is it that you have set the resale period at 2 years? All right. Well, for PRH tenants buying the flats, they will only be able to sell it after 3 years. How come for the white form buyers they'll be able to sell it after 2 years? So I think you are actually even more relaxed with them, and also you will have to give them time to answer the question. And also for the existing green form buyers, every year they're actually entering the HOS market. So how many of them are there? Do you know that? Well, Chairman, according to what happened in the past, every year for green form buyers buying in the secondary market, the number is not that great. Actually, we might be talking about 2,000. And for HOS flats without payment of premium, we might be talking about 250,000. In other words, every year, even if we have 5,000 white form buyers being selected, still it constitutes a very small number. But of course, I understand that recently the prices in the secondary HOS market have gone up. But then we also have to understand that that is against the backdrop of generally escalating property prices in Hong Kong. Next, Dr. Joseph Lee, obviously the Secretary's intention is to help the white form buyers to buy their own flats, and that would also increase the circulation. Well, I'm not querying the intention, but then as many members have different views, for example, they said that that has given rise to the competition between white form and green form buyers. So I have the following questions. Number 1, in terms of the effectiveness of the scheme, you're actually talking about some 2,000 transactions in the secondary HOS markets. So how many flats will be available for sale? And if you look at the current prices, all right, I'll have to sell my HOS flat before I can enter the private property market. But then, well, even if I manage to sell my HOS flat, I will still not be able to afford a flat in the private property market. And therefore, after opening up this 2,500 flats, will these tenants be able to really buy a private or HOS flats at such high prices? So how many people will actually be able to benefit? All right, you said that there would be some 1,900. So for the 2,500 people getting the letter, will they really be able to buy those flats at market prices? And also, on average, you're talking about some $8,000 to $10,000 per square feet in the private property market, and therefore, for the HOS flat owners who have sold their flats, will they be able to really buy a private flat in a property market? Because you're not talking about vacant HOS flats. You're talking about flats that are currently occupied by HOS flat owners. So are you actually fueling the market? And at the same time, you're not able to increase the circulation by improving the revolving door policy. If they could afford it, they would have bought up a flat in the private property market instead of buying a flat in the HOS secondary market. Professor Chung, I think there are some pragmatic restrictions. We're relaxing the market. We're talking about white form applicants who are able to meet the means test. In other words, they are not likely to be able to catch up with the escalating prices, and therefore to a certain extent that would also restrict the prices in the secondary HOS market. But then what factors will HOS flat owners consider before they would sell their flats? Of course, that would be difficult for us to tell because individual owners might have their own consideration. And as to the effectiveness, I think we will have to wait and see because we haven't yet rolled out the program. We will have to wait until after it's been formally launched. But then as an initial attempt with the 5,000 quota out of the 250,000 flats, I think it would only constitute a very small portion, and therefore it should be quite safe. And we are actually going to do it in 2 batches a year. Therefore, we don't think that the impact on the market would be very significant. All right, can I ask for some supplementary information? All right, how many flats are being offered for sale every year in the secondary market with payment of premium? Yes, I'd like to know the number. Next, Mr. Chong, I think the figure might be very specious. You might say that there are only less than 2,000 transactions every year, but then you're actually talking about owner-occupiers selling their flats. So what incentive is there for them to sell their flats? Have you conducted any survey? Some people might just wish to live there for life. So why is it that there are so few transactions? That's because the private property prices have already gone beyond these occupiers' affordability. All right, how can they afford to make the down payment? You're talking about some $300,000, $400,000 as down payment. So how can they afford it? So when you came up with this plan, it's not able to relieve the long waiting list. Actually, you feel the prices have skyrocketed as a result of that. So how are you able to ensure that for sitting tenants of PRH flats, they'll be able to buy a flat and then they'll be able to surrender their flats for greater circulation? And also, you've also run counter to your well-established housing policy, which has been in place for over 10 years. Well, for PRH sitting tenants trying to buy an HOS flat, they can also wait for the new HOS flats to come on stream. And of course, they can also buy a flat in the HOS secondary market, and of course whether they are able to buy it, that would depend on the prices and also their own intention. We are not forcing them to buy a flat in the HOS market. As for HOS flat owners, whether they are going to sell their flats, of course we cannot unilaterally control the supply, and therefore for the 5,000 eligible white form applicants, we are just giving them a chance so that they'll be able to identify the flats in a market. As to the end result, as I said in my answer to Dr. Joseph Lee's question, that will depend on the actual situation.
Chairman, is it the administration's intention to change the long-established housing policy that have been in place for over a decade? And is there any intention to resume HOS, say for example those with a harmony style, to revitalize the HOS market? The policy itself has not changed. As I said, with the production of new HOS, sitting tenants or non-sitting tenants, in other words, white farmers, as long as they are eligible, they can make the application. The secondary market has been in place for quite some time, and this is the first time when this market is extended to white farmers. But I've explained to you the reasons why we extend this scheme, because of the special situation, and this is a transitional period. And in terms of the TPS, as I said in the last council meeting on Wednesday, there is no plan for the administration to revive the TPS. Mr. Eleanor, we recently heard of the announcement of the enhanced SSD and also the buyer's stamp duty BSD, and now you propose to extend the secondary market to white farmers. So is it the case that actually you are defeating, the proposals are defeating themselves? Because on one hand, you announce the enhanced SSD and the BSD, and at the same time, you extend the secondary market to white farmers, which in turn will fuel the property market. Have you considered their respective impact? Another question, have you done any assessment to find out if the 5,000 white farmers will be able to get their flats within a short time? If not, how long would it take for the market to take up the 5,000? The quota of 5,000 will be placed in the market with over 250,000 HOS flats and a certain amount of TPS and FFSS flats. With the additional 5,000 white farmers, will it change? Will they have an impact on demand and supply? Of course there is, but we think that in the end, this is not the sole factor that affect the market situation. There are others. With the recent announcement of the enhanced SSD and the BSD, we don't think there is any conflict. My question was whether you have done any assessment as to how long the market will take to absorb the 5,000. Sorry, Chairman, we have not done such assessment. The extension of the scheme is to give white farmers opportunities to purchase a flat, and we're talking about a small amount. Well, say, for example, when we talk about revival of the secondary market, we did not think about how many people will buy. Property prices have increased in whatever market. Will the administration set down a target? Say, for example, when the prices reach a certain level, they will roll out additional measures to curb the increase. We don't have such targets or indicators. White farm buyers are subject to income and asset limit, so there are restrictions. Mr. Lang Yu-chung. Chairman. Secretary, have you carefully considered whether to actually implement this scheme? Because there are a lot of doubts raised by members. And in the end, the gist of the doubt is that the targeted group will not benefit. Say, for example, you aim at benefiting green farmers and then white farmers, and then you want to in some way transform the HOS flats as a flat in the private market. But the secondary market, with your measure, will only have its prices pushed up, and in the end, grassroots will not benefit by being able to purchase a flat. So I would like to move a motion. I want to ask the Secretary to shelve this proposal and reconsider, because this will not be a solution to resolve the problem of grassroots not being able to afford a flat given the high property prices. They need to try to increase supply. In the private market, we see more speculators than genuine home buyers. So I would like to move a motion, Chairman, to have this scheme shelved and to have a review. Well, if you have a motion, please write it down and circulate it among members, and we will put it to a vote. Secretary. We make this proposal not out of nowhere. In the past year, there has been abundant discussion in the community. Let's say, for example, with the suspension of the HOS for quite some time, white farm buyers in the market feel that it's difficult for them to purchase a flat. The target is to help those who are unable to buy a flat in the private housing market and at the same time are not eligible to be green farmers. We relax this scheme to benefit this group. This is a transitional measure before the new HOS flats are available in 2016-17. So we propose this scheme. We don't want to shelve it, and we will monitor the effectiveness. I think this will be a rash decision. When we talk about secondary market, I think this will not resolve the problem of home purchase. This will only fuel property prices without helping those in need. Can you explain to me how it will not push up property prices? Your time's up, Miss Alice Mack. Your microphone's off. Miss Alice Mack. Can you hear me? Yes. I have a question for the Secretary. Have you considered relaxing the rental market? Very few HOS owners will intend to sell their flat. Once they've bought it, they treat it as their home. So they don't really want to sell. So they would rather rent it out than sell it. For the quota of 5,000, only 1/10 is allocated for singletons. I don't think it's not of much help to them. First, would you consider adjusting the proportion to help singletons? 2. There are still some surplus HOS flats. Will you consider first sell off the surplus HOS flats before you implement this secondary market scheme? The surplus 800 or so flats will be made available in the market as soon as possible. For the quota of 5,000 wide form buyers, it will be done in 2 batches. For the first 2,500 applicants, they will be given time, so it will not be a rushed decision. For the proportion of 9:1, that is families to singleton, this is arrived at after a lengthy discussion in the Subsidized Housing Committee under the HA. The priority for public housing is to meet the needs of families before singletons. In relation to relaxation of letting of HOS flats with premium not paid, as I've said in response to a previous question, we have no intention to consider relaxing such restrictions, because that is a restriction in the law. Such stringent requirement is in place because we aim at making available the HOS flats to meet their housing needs. Ms. Mack, any follow-up? Secretary, you said that there are about 1,900 flats available for sale in the market, that is HOS flats. So if you want to increase supply, either the price is high. Well, you have to have high prices for owners to be willing to sell, and in effect, you are just encouraging speculative activities. Mr. Raymond Wong. Well, as the Secretary said, this is a transitional measure before the new HOS flat is available. So this is just, they are taking it one step at a time. The design of this, it shows ignorance. Some members have mentioned this. Recently, the transaction has been dwindling in this secondary market. In 2009, there is just over 2,000, that is 2021, 2010, 2,181, and 2011, 1,599, and as October this year, 1,516. Why? Because there is serious equilibrium of the housing market. Just like private housing market, there is a high property prices, way above the affordability of green farmers. Only a handful of well-off tenants can afford it. Say, for example, in Kwok-hing Fargyuan, there is a flat. It cost $4 million. The price per square foot is over 7,000. So this has lost its effectiveness in meeting housing needs of grassroots. You said it would, well, unless the market is moving towards equilibrium, otherwise a relaxation will push up demand and thereby driving prices up. Well, Secretary, you don't have to actually go lie in a coffin flat to know what is going on. They are asking for $7,000 for a monthly rental, and I'm sure the administration has measures to tackle that. And shortly there will be a motion, and I think you should respond to that. For me, the solution is simple: build more PRH units. As simple as that. But you think it's something that is very complicated. For those who are on a waiting list, rental subsidy. On an occasion, I think Mr. Kwok-hing was also there. It was a case conference with the HA and also with the Social Welfare Department. Rental subsidy of CSSA recipients cannot catch up with rental levels. You said that there won't be any flats for rental of HOS flats, but there won't be any rental control. But without rental control, grassroots will face difficulties in tackling rising rental. And what about those who are on the waiting list or those who are existing tenants? You have to find ways to help them. What you propose is useless. Sorry, there is no time. I don't think that you've left time for the Secretary to answer. Mr. Lu Wei-Kwok. You're talking about transitional alleviating measures. This is one of the measures. For it to be effective, there is a very crucial condition. Are there a lot of sellers, more sellers than buyers in this market? If not, by relaxing, by extending it to, if that is the case, then your measure will be effective by increasing the number of buyers in the market. I have a question. Does the administration or the Bureau have some accurate assessment? For this scheme to be successful, in the first place, there should be a shortage of buyers. So on average, there is 1,900 transactions a year. You will have to, in the end, there should be increased transaction for the scheme to be effective. I think the estimate is important. If you can't give me an answer today, I hope you will at least give me some raw data after the meeting.
I think there is time for you to answer the question. So would you like to respond to that, Bureau Director? Yes, as I said just now, we didn't have those figures. But then out of the 250,000 units without payment of premium, in the past, the number of transactions was below 2,000. And what were the reasons? Was it that there was a shortage of buyers or sellers? So what was the reason? Well, there are different interpretations in the community. That's why by launching the scheme, actually we have balanced the need against the number of HOS flats and also TPS flats before we came up with the scheme. And of course, after the formal launching of the scheme, how many people will benefit and how many people will be transacting those units under the scheme, we will still have to wait and see. Chairman, I would also like to indicate my stance on the scheme. Yes, as for the actual effectiveness, we will have to wait and see. And precisely because of this, I think there are different ways to ease the housing problem. At least for the white form buyers, that would offer them an additional channel to buy a flat, and therefore I'm not going to say no to it. All right. There are two more members who would like to ask in the first round, Abraham Sheck and Tony Chair. We have already overrun. And also Kwok-hing. So originally we have scheduled to end by 3:30. So for those who are speaking in the first round, for those three that have indicated, all right, we are not going to have a second round because we have already overrun, and then we will have to deal with the motion moved by Mr. Leung Yew Chung. And this is an ad hoc motion, and we've already printed it out for your information. And I don't think we will have time to debate on the wording of the motion because we have another item for discussion. Okay? So please take a look at the wording of the motion, and then after the first round of questions, we'll deal with the motion. We'll have to put it to the vote. We don't have time for further discussion on that. All right, Abraham Sheck. Thank you, Chairman. Well, after listening to many members' views, I think they all have a valid point there. The administration doesn't understand that in the housing market, I think they've confused the private property market with the PRH and HOS market. I think the two markets are very different. That's number one. And number two, by introducing this interim scheme, it's not going to help ease the problem. All right, on the one hand, you say that you're increasing supply so that white farm buyers will be able to buy their flats, and you think that that would help them. But then on the other hand, you're actually forcing those sellers who will go into the private market, and the developers will be very grateful to you. But then you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it as a big boon to them. Because for HOS flats, they are supposed to allow people to stay there for life. And therefore, the reason why we have the 250,000 flats available, only 10% of them would be selling those units. And this policy is a good one, because that would enable them to really solve their housing problem, and then they'll be able to improve their living environment. And now you're actually messing up the market. All right, the white farm buyers will be able to buy these flats, and then for the green farm buyers, they should have been able to enter the HOS market by vacating their PRH flats. And now 200,000 people are on the general waiting list, and their living condition is really very appalling. And now you're allowing the white farm applicants to buy up these flats, and as a result, green farm buyers will find it more difficult to buy an HOS flat. But then what's worse is that those on the waiting list will find it even more difficult to get a flat. So who are you trying to help? Are you trying to help the GF applicants, or are you helping those on the waiting list? You will have to be very clear about this, because those are those who have greater needs. They are people living in an appalling environment, and is totally unacceptable in modern day society. But then you're actually forcing these people to wait for even longer. For how much longer can they wait then? Another member, as Mr. Raymond Wong just said, he was right in saying that you will have to speed up the process of putting up PRH flats. Many elders, if they are not able to get a flat, then they might pass away before they can be allocated a flat. How come you are forcing these people to buy up flats, and then for the other side, they won't be able to get a PRH flat? You will have to know the problem very clearly. I think that has given rise to more social conflict, and the conflict is getting worse, and you're not able to resolve the problem at all. He won't have time to answer your question. Next, Tony Chair. Thank you, Chairman. After listening to our colleagues' views and also the response by the Secretary, I think the impression that I have of the scheme is that you've never considered the outcome or the effectiveness. All right, if you look at the past record, only less than 2,000 transactions a year. In other words, not many people are willing to sell their flats. So have you done any assessment? Is it that there are many who would like to sell, but then there are simply no buyers? That's why you're actually encouraging more buyers to buy up these flats. But then the net outcome is that prices have been fueled, and they are actually going up. So are you trying to peg the prices of HOS flats closer to those in a private market? Does that mean that more people will be buying up private properties and as a result prices will be fueled further? No, I have no intention of fueling property prices. That's not true. Mr. Abraham Sheikh just said that these are two distinctly different markets. Yes, indeed, that's true. Because even in the second HOS market, even for GF applicants or WF applicants, after they bought up this flat in the secondary HOS market, and if they want to sell these flats in the open market, they will have to pay the premium. And therefore, we are actually talking about two distinctly different markets. And also, HOS owners would also be allowed to sell their flats in the open market after they have paid the premium. So all along, we are actually talking about two distinctly different markets. As for the actual effectiveness, as I've said in response to several members' questions, we will have to look at the actual outcome. But then given the huge number of flats available, as to whether there might be some owners who might be willing to sell their flats without affecting their own living or housing needs, then we will have to wait and see. I'd like to follow up. Yes, of course. My view is we would like to revitalize the market. I think one of the objectives is precisely that. But then after listening to what you said, apparently you have not done any estimate as to how many flats will be made available. And I find it strange. Why have you not done any assessment? If there are only 2,000 flats available, then I think it's more or less the same as what is currently happening with green form applicants. Chairman, with regard to the green form applications, actually we are talking about slightly more than 1,000, and out of the 250,000 every year, we're actually talking about a relatively low figure, because for HOS flats they've been sold for 20-30 years now. But then of course for every or individual owner, it's up to them to decide if they want to sell their flats, and with the extended scheme, whether they're going to sell the flat to a green form applicants or white form applicants, that's mutual. That's an agreement between the two. So will there be an effect that you might be fueling the market? You're creating more buyers? No. If they are not able to afford a flat in a market, they are not going to buy it anyway. Kwok-hing. Thank you, Chairman. Here I would also like to declare interest, because I'm also a member of the Committee on Subsidized Housing of the HA. I've also taken part in the discussion on the scheme. Well, with this scheme, actually we are talking about two distinctly different markets. That is the HOS market and also the private property market. Why is it that we are going to allow white form buyers to apply for this? That's because if you look at the HOS market, well, in the secondary market, it's a very stagnant market. There isn't any market at all, because only green form buyers will be able to buy it. But then for green form buyers, they might not be prepared to give up their PRH flats in order to buy an HOS flat. But then in the market, there are people out there who are eligible to buy an HOS flats. They are white form buyers, and they would also like to they would like to own their own homes. And they've been living in PRH for a while, and they have the means to improve their living environment, and therefore they would be looking for such flats. But then basically there are very few sellers. And why is it so? That's because they would only be able to sell their flats to green form buyers, and then for white form buyers they are not able to sell those flats to them. And therefore with this extension, they'll be able to do it. And for white form buyers, they will only be allowed to resell their flats after 2 years. So this is a new attempt. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that would offer an alternative to those who have this need. But then in the open market, I think it's a different market altogether. Of course, if they can afford it, they can always buy a flat in the open market, but then they might not be able to do so under the current circumstances. But then they are eligible to buy an HOS flats because they are white form buyers. And therefore, if once this scheme is extended to them, then they'll be able to buy this in the secondary HOS market. And before the relaunching of the new HOS scheme, this is just a relief measure so that these people in need will be able to buy a flat. So we are just coming up with additional measures to help those with this aspiration to buy their flats. I think this will help diversify the choices. And if we do not do it at all, then it will be back to square one. Yes, these flats will be available to PRH tenants, but then others will not be able to buy it, and there will be a net loss to the community as a whole. Time's up. Next, Lam Tai Fai, the last one to speak in the first round. Yes, just now the Bureau Director said that with regard to this scheme, you have not done any assessment at all as to the effectiveness. I find it shocking. Well, even if you dare to say it, I dare not hear it. Because C.Y. Leung's administration has said that he intends to introduce 5,000 flats a year. And also the Committee on Subsidized Housing of the HA, after your discussion, you said that the 5,000 flats should be divided into 2 batches, but then you have not done any assessment at all. So have you done some assessment thinking that 5,000 might not be able to work out well, and therefore you divided it into 2 batches? So is it that you do not have the confidence, but then you've already pledged that there will be 5,000 and therefore you can only do it in 2 batches? I don't believe that you have not done any assessment at all, or else you might be just fighting in the dark. So how can it be acceptable that you're just doing it out of the blue? And Mr. Leung also talked about the 5,000 flats. Have you done any assessment on that? And have you made any further assessment on the 5,000? How come it's not going to be divided into 2 batches? Why don't you introduce or roll that out in 1 batch? Why is it that it's not divided into 3, 4, or 5 batches? Bureau Director, as I just said, for the 5,000 units a year, out of the 250,000 units without payment of premium, I think is appropriate. And doing it in 2 batches, that's because for those who have been eligible as right form applicants, they'll have 6 months, and where necessary, they can also renew it once, and therefore every batch will have 2,500 units, and the number will not be too large. But then in the past, the average figure was less than 2,000. So how can you be sure that you'll be able to reach that figure in an orderly manner? We are not trying to force people to buy flats. If you do not mean to force them to buy, then why do you have to launch it at all? Allow him to finish. Yes, Permanent Secretary.
Yeah, there is a practical thing here. I have to have staff sufficient to be able to process all the applications within a reasonable space of time. And at the moment, I can cope with about 2,500 at a time. That gives me the opportunity to get my staff in place, processed, approvals, etc. It's a simple, practical matter.
嗱，不如我問啦，係咪不如咁啦？你分2期係咪先推？
So is it going to be the first release of 2,500, and then you will look at the situation before you decide, or are you going? It is certain that in 6 months' time another 2,500 will be launched. Secretary, Chairman, we are going to do the latter. That is, the coming year there will be 5,000 applicants drawn, and in the first batch 2,500 will be released. What about in the first batch there is less than 1,900? So you don't have to act in accordance with the situation. No, that is not the case. Of course, we will look at the effectiveness, and we will monitor the situation. That means that you're going to just launch it regardless. Of course, I respect and understand members' view, but from the administration's stance, we need some time to gauge the effectiveness of the measure. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung would like to move a motion. It's seconded by Dr. Fernando Cheung and Mr. K.K. Fong. I'll read it out now, and this will be put to a vote. This panel urges the administration to temporarily shelve the extension of the home ownership secondary market to wide form buyers, to have review in order to push up further the property prices of the secondary HOS market. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those in favor. 9. Put your hands down. Those against, please raise their hands. 5 against. Abstention, please raise your hands. 2. The majority is 4. This motion is passed. We ask the administration to consider it. Well, I would like the Secretary to hear that members would like you to come back with an answer next time. As we understand, and well, it will not be good for it to be shelved without further exploring into it or launching it. We would like to see its effectiveness after it's been launched. As you all know, this motion is not binding. We express our views. Your view has been clearly expressed, and you have heard the reply from the Secretary. It's useless to get bogged down in the argument. Next item, long-term housing strategy. There are 2 papers. One is LC paper CB bracket 1107 stroke 1211 bracket 03. Sorry. It's CB bracket 1107 stroke 12 to 13 bracket 03. Administration paper on long-term housing strategy. The other one is FS08. Stroke 12 to 13 is a fact sheet on a summary of press reports on formulating the long-term housing strategy prepared by the Electrical Secretariat. I would like to first ask the administration to take us through the paper before members ask questions. And I ask you to agree that I will exercise my discretion and extend this meeting by 15 minutes. No objections, right? Well, first I will ask the representative, the administration, to go through it. In order to save time, I will just go directly to Ms. Agnes Wong, Deputy Secretary, to give you the presentation. This is in relation to the framework and the timetable. We're here to collect views. The purpose of the review of the long-term housing strategy LTHS is to make optimum use of the existing land and housing resources to meet housing needs of the community in the short, medium, and long term. The scope of the review will cover 3 major areas. First, compilation, collation, and comprehension of all relevant housing-related information, and ways to increase housing supply, including optimization of the usage of existing public and private housing stock in the short, medium, and long term, and projection of housing demand for both public and private sectors to meet the needs of various groups in the community. In terms of constitutional framework, is one of 2-tier. First, there is the steering committee on LTHS, and on another, there is a working group. This steering committee is chaired by the Secretary, comprising 50 non-official from academia, from architect, planning, housing, those engaged in long-term study in these areas, and also 3 official members. The first meeting was convened last month. The plan is to have one meeting every 6 weeks. That is the plan. For the time being, if necessary, we will have additional meetings. The working group is chaired by the PS. And we have government representatives attending the working group, including Policy Bureau and the Census and Statistics Department and Planning. The working group is to support the work of the steering committee and to follow up on their recommendation. The steering committee will have to go into detail to study the issues they have to look at. In short, there are a number of areas that they need to look at. Say, for example, specific groups, say youngsters, elderly people, families living in poor living conditions, and also first-time buyers, those living in subdivided flats, and also demand and supply in public and private housing, and the respective needs of different groups, how to accord priority, how to optimize and rationalize the PRH resources. These are areas the steering committee need to cover, and as to specific details, they will consider them in the next meeting. What we're doing at the moment is that we have set up a dedicated website under the THB. At the initial stage, we would like to collect views from the community through this dedicated website. Apart from the internet platform, we plan to, at the beginning of next year, conduct focus group discussions to gather in-depth comments from the respective groups. After collecting views from the community and after the steering committee has looked at these individual issues, we aim at releasing a consultation paper in the middle of next year. Thereafter, there will be a public consultation lasting 3 months. This will be of a considerable scale to gather views in relation to this issue. After the public consultation, we aim at releasing the consultation report at the end of next year. Whilst conducting review on this long-term housing strategy, measures will still be rolled out to respond to urgent needs in society as time changes. Well, that is the end of my presentation. The focus is the work objective and the framework. We would like to hear more from members. Thank you. We have Kwok-hing, Wu Chi-wai, Fernando Cheung, Lei Chi Cheung, and a few more members in the first round. 4 minutes question and answer. Dr. Kwok-hing. Thank you. I don't think anyone will object to long-term housing planning, but I don't know how effective they will be. As we all know, in 1987, there was one done. That was the first long-term housing strategy. In 1997, there was another one with a different theme, but along the same line. I remember back in 87, and I learned from papers between 87 to 2001. We're talking about 40,000 PRH, HOS, and private housing units. And by then, the population was below 6 million. Now we have over 7 million. And over 70,000 people are living in subdivided flats. And now the government is proposing another long-term housing strategy. If we are to wait for your strategy to be realized, to resolve the problems, I think these people would have lost all hope. Last week, Secretary, you told us that in the coming 3 to 4 years there are only going to be 65,000 units. So which is true? Under the LTHS, you will be looking at the coming 10 years or so, from 2013-14 to 2023-24. And you say that all the way till 2017 there is not going to be any land available, so there won't be any more flats. How much weight should we put to these strategies? It's not the first time when the administration changes its mind. When the situation changes, say for example developers don't like it. Say for the enhanced SSD, a dozen of developers have come out expressing their discontent. So is it a point of order? Developers that did not make any noises, I think this should be corrected. This is not a point of time. I think my time has been taken up. Please continue. So I don't know how seriously we should be in response to such long-term housing strategy. Okay, when it's set, when will it be launched? When will they be in place? How helpful will they be? So what are your assessment? How much help will it be to people who are in great need? When will you be able to house people who are on the waiting list? Just now, Dr. Kwok mentioned about 87 and 97 reports of long-term housing strategies in the past. Well, every time when there was a review, it was done by the then administration in relation to the then situation. We're now talking about the current housing strategy in relation to current situation. We're not waiting for the completion of the review and only to be followed by long-term planning. Of course, for urgent problems, there will be short and medium-term measures to tackle them. What about the 65,000 we're talking about first-time residential flats in the private housing market in the coming 3 to 4 years, excluding public housing? We are aware of the shortage in housing. So we will also focus on short and medium term, but we should not forget long-term strategies, because we have heard from community that there should be long-term housing planning, including that covering land. So when will it be triggered? The review has already started, hopefully in the middle of the year. Consultation paper will be released to engage the public. The planning period will cover we think the coming 10 years. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Well, I see the scope of the review is to ensure optimal use of existing and housing resources. So, I would like to say that this has not taken into account increase in supply under the development. You're only looking at existing land and housing resources. Is that the case? Secondly, it is following from the first question. HOS and TPS units that are sold accounts for about 300,000 units. Mrs. Carrie Lam said that PRH units can be revitalized. So will you, under the LTHS, consider increasing supply in the HOS market, aside from the 5,000 white formers you've just mentioned, to alleviate the rising prices?
通常都有另外嘅一個咧，就叫做係公屋嘅重建嘅計劃，去善用已經有嘅一啲土地嘅資源咧，去確保嗰個公屋重建計劃咧係有序嘅。咁我想了解呢3點。
局長。
主席就雖然文件係有提到呢個善用現有嘅土地嘅資源，但係呢個唔等於我哋唔係同時去諗咧開拓新嘅資源嘅。的確開拓新嘅土地資源喺新嘅土地方面咧，係能夠對呢個房屋嘅需要做一個供應方面嘅。
Exclude the opening up of new land resources. As we said in a PowerPoint presentation, we have already made it clear that for the steering committee that will be set up, there will also be an interdepartmental working group, and that comprises different policy bureaus, including bureaus and departments responsible for land zoning, and that would also assist the steering committee to look at future land uses, so that in terms of the supply of public and private housing, that would also provide an indicator as to what needs to be done. As to revitalizing PRH flats and also redeveloping PRH flats, well, in discussing the LTHS, we'll be listening to views from the community comprehensively. All right, under the steering committee, there are 3 official members. So which 3 official members will they be? Well, for the 3 official members, Other than myself being the chairman of the steering committee, the 3 official members will be the 2 permanent secretaries. The first one is Mr. Prescott, because he's responsible for housing in the THB. Another one is another permanent secretary who is responsible for land zone, that is Mr. Chow, and also another one is the government economist. Mr. Wu? Well, under the LTHS, other than the bureau director who will be the chairman, and what's the relationship between you and the secretary for development? Chairman? Well, for housing issue is the top priority of the existing administration, and therefore we will be adopting a holistic approach in dealing with this issue. For different departments or bureaus, if they're involved in the process of land supply and housing supply, then there is a chance that they will be involved, and therefore we'll be working closely with the Development Bureau. I think Mr. Wu was asking which bureau will be taking the lead. So between you and the Secretary for Development, who is taking the lead? Well, as far as the LTHS is concerned, of course, I'll be the leading bureau director. But then when it comes to specific land zoning by the administration, of course, that would include the Development Bureau. And also the FS has also got a steering committee on housing land supply. So can you clarify can you give us an organizational structure? All right. Yes, we'll do that after the meeting. Dr. Fernando Chung. Thank you, Chairman. We are talking about some 200,000 applications for PRH, and we are talking about some 400,000 people, including many who are non-elderly singletons. And the demand is ever rising, as you have just pointed out. All right, is a record high, the longest queue ever. And still, the administration is only able to provide some 15,000 PRH flats. Obviously, that's far from adequate. In particular, for the non-elderly singleton applicants, the quota is set at about 2,000 every year. So you don't need to review the LTHS. You know it's a big problem. All right, with the steering committee on LTHS, I've noticed that there are many members of the HA, and they are also of the view that with this discussion, if there is no clear source of land supply, and if there are no policies to tie with this effort, it's difficult to resolve the problem. And just now, from what I heard from the Bureau Director, apparently he said that no, that's not true. Everything will be discussed, and also the Development Bureau will also be sitting on the steering committee. So will the steering committee be able to disclose all the information to the public? Whether you're basing your discussion on such information on land supply data, and also on your assessment on housing demand, and also the minutes of meetings, and also is there a chance that such meetings can be opened up to the public so that they can also take part in the discussion? And I'd also like to ask another question, that is for different parties, including the non-elderly singletons and also new arrivals, will there be housing indicators? You talk about the 3-year waiting time. So these groups will be excluded from the 3-year rule. So will there be an indicator as to the duration of the waiting time for these groups? All right. In discussing the LTHS, the steering committee will be making forecasts and assessing the needs of different groups, including elderly groups and also other non-elderly singleton groups and so on. All right. In due course, in response to the comments from the community, we'll be coming up with different criteria. But then for the discussions of the steering committee itself, in accordance with our established procedures, we're not going to disclose them. But then in the process, we'll be talking to different groups in the community. There'll be interaction, and through different platforms, we will be collecting the views from different quarters of the community. And of course, there is a chance that we can come back to the panel to brief you or update you on the progress. But then in the end, with regard to the consultation document by the steering committee in the middle of next year, that will be published, and it will set out all the deliberations of the steering committee and also the different assessments that we have made. With regard to land planning, is not supposed to be within the terms of reference for the steering committee because land zoning involves statutory procedures, including the TPB's procedures. And also within the administration, the FS is also coordinating a committee on long-term housing supply. And as you're aware, recently, what is most sensitive is once anything has to do with land supply, those would be market-sensitive information, and that will have to be dealt with very carefully. And therefore, there is very clear delineation of responsibilities. But then after the first meeting of the steering committee, I've already said publicly that when it comes to housing demand, inevitably that will have to do with supply because actually these are the two sides of the coin. And therefore, any recommendation will also affect land planning, land supply, and so on. But then what about minutes of meeting? Can you disclose them? All right, Chairman. Well, for the consultation document of the steering committee, that will set out the deliberations of the steering committee. Yes, Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. Well, in the past, for housing policy, in particular the LTHS, so you would quantify the housing supply indicators. In the past, we had 85,000, and then the last term of government also came up with 15,000 units for PRH, and then for HOS 5,000, and then for private sector housing 20,000. So you have quantified the housing demand, but then that would also highlight a problem. When it comes to this term of government, when you conduct a study, you may no longer be prepared to adopt those indicators, and therefore, in the LTHS review, actually you're not going to look very long into the future because when it comes to a second term government or the next term of government, they might yet come up with other sets of indicators. And therefore, all you might be doing is to look at the current situation, and then you may be making some decisions. Those will have to be completed within this term of government, or else you will not be able to meet our basic demand. And therefore, I think the LTHS should include some of the existing problems, and you should endeavor to resolve some of these problems. Other than land supply, you will have to look into it. And in terms of staffing, that will also be very important. Well, you might be quantifying your indicator, and even if you come up with a figure of 85,000, you may not be able to meet it. In particular, if you look at the manpower situation in the construction industry, is very tight, and there is a shortage of new blood joining the trade. And therefore, how are you going to tie in with the additional demand for new blood in the construction industry? You will have to give us an account on that. And secondly, we have been emphasizing the importance of Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people, and Hong Kong people should enjoy priority in buying properties. So would that also be included in the LTHS? Because as a strategy, you should not be calling it the LTHS at all. Actually, this should be within this term of government. So it should be a housing strategy for this term of government. And will Hong Kong people's priority in buying Hong Kong properties be one of them? Well, in fact, Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people is already a policy of the existing government, and therefore Hong Kong people's needs would be given priority. That's already our policy, and that spirit is also reflected in our different policies in coming up with the LTHS. In my answer to Dr. Kwok-hing's question, I also referred to 10 years. It doesn't mean that nothing will be changed within the near term. In fact, if you look at the incumbent government, we hope that for every few years we'll be reviewing the progress, we'll be looking at the latest economic situation before we review it. In terms of quantifying the indicators, well, in the review process before it's completed, I dare not talk about future targets and also future indicators and so on. But then for such targets and so on, even if there might be some figures, we should not treat them as rigid figures or something set in stone, because when there are changes in the circumstances, we'll be prepared to change them as well. But then overall speaking, in terms of housing supply, we need to have some indicators in order to give us the direction as to what path we should be taking. And Mr. Leung also referred to the construction industry and also the relevant industries and also the manpower supply. Yes, indeed, we are fully aware of that, and we've been discussing with the relevant industries as to how we can resolve those problems. So in terms of the supply, in terms of land, And also in terms of the manpower from the construction industry, well, we will have to work those out very carefully in order to ensure that whatever we propose is achievable. Mr. Christopher Chung, I have 3 questions, Mr. Chairman. As some colleagues also talk about the waiting time, we believe that the situation is worsening. Well, for every term of government, they've been saying that they hope that that would be done within 3 years, and during the latter part of Sik Tong's era, they were able to barely achieve it. But then the situation is getting worse, and now I think it's even worse than what happened in the British colonial era. That is, the waiting time was about 6 to 7 years. So I'd like you to tell us when will you be able to achieve the 3-year waiting time? And also number 2 is equity. It's about the floor area per person. All right, there are 2 systems within one district. Under the old system is 7 square meters. In some cases, it's 5.5 square meters. But then for new housing, it's over 7 square meters. And very often, for those who have been living in PRH flats, actually the floor area per person will be even less than the new arrivals. So that's not fair. So you have to come up with a timetable as to how you're going to eliminate the discrepancy, because this is grossly unfair. It's not possible that for the sitting tenants, they're actually living in more cramped space. And that would also give rise to my 3rd question. I hope that your study will also be looking at the issue of respect for individual privacy, because in some 4 to 5p households, they are not able to have separate bedrooms for different people, and therefore, as a result, when the children grow up, well, in terms of the studies and so on, they are going to affect others, and they don't even have a room to change clothes. So in terms of respect for individuals' privacy, I think that has already escalated to one of our core values. And how are you going to protect the individual's privacy? Well, you're providing public housing, and still you're actually doing this, resulting in different members of the family not being able to enjoy their individual's privacy. So you will have to do something about it. Secretary. Chairman, with regard to the 3-year waiting time, we've been saying that it's about the first offer. So the average waiting time is 3 years. So that's been a performance pledge adopted by the HA. And you also talk about the Hong Kong British era. I was also a member of the HA, and actually we were talking about 8 or 9 years waiting time. And actually since the handover, the waiting time has been shortened very significantly. But then for individual cases, would there be a case whereby they might be waiting for more than 3 years? Of course, there are such cases, but then for different reasons. And on different occasions, I've been telling those who have been waiting for a long time, and if they can come up with the details, will be more than happy to look into it. And probably they might be very specific about the location, the district, and so on. And as a result, the waiting time might be a bit longer. And some might have problems with their eligibility and so on. But then it's hard to say. But then for the average waiting time of 3 years, so that they can be given the first offer, that's the average figure. And of course, for the living space, yes, if there is more supply, of course, we'll be able to do a bit more. But then with limited supply, of course, we can only put up with this.
Mr. Chung, he fails to explain how privacy is going to be resolved. Now there are problems, but instead of trying to tackle the shortage, I don't think you have the determination. Are you going to switch back to the length that was in place in the colonial period? I think it will take as long as 5 to 6 years before they are actually housed. Mr. Abraham Sheck. Well, I don't mind taking the next turn. I support the review of LTHS. This is not as simple as strategy. Demographic changes, population growth, supply of land, resource availability have all to be taken into account, together with economic development. If you just look at LTHS alone, then it is meaningless. Some members have clearly pointed out that the administration will be there for 5 years, and you still have not clearly stated out what your housing policy is. The second thing I'd like to say is about about the steering committee. 15 non-officials. I don't know how many legislators will there be. This council represents 3.2 million people. We have representativeness. This is something to do with the livelihood of people. But there is no consultation. There is no platform for us to express our views. A lot of legislators are elected. It's not just about participation. I'm not asking for participation. Maybe we have a committee, just like the one on West Kowloon Cultural District or the one on railway matters. So that there will be a platform for the representatives of 3.2 million people to discuss about LTHS. Otherwise, we would have failed our job. Secretary, I fully identify with what Mr. Sheikh said. Of course, legislators are representative. That's why we're here to talk to you about our idea. Before the release of the consultation, there will be a chance for us to have another discussion with you. And I agree that we should first listen to the legislators. And in relation to population growth and resource availability, of course, they have a deciding factor on our strategy. We have to take into account demographic changes, economic growth, which in turn affect housing demand. The CE has clearly said in the address to the LegCo, they will help grassroots to be housed, to be allocated a PRH unit, and for low to medium income groups, measures will be in place for them to buy their own flat. And number 3 is to put in place the property ladder to promote social mobility. So what about roadmap and timetable? We need those to monitor your progress. I think instead of a consultation paper, there should be a chance for us to actually express our views. Secretary, I've heard Mr. Sheikh. Well, don't just give us a consultation paper. We've just started the work of the steering committee. We believe that when there is any further idea, we will definitely come back to you for further discussion. Mr. Sheikh, you proposed to have a subcommittee on housing strategy. Is that right? Sorry, I'm using others' time. I think this is heavily related to housing. We have the duty to keep an eye on it. And if it's just 15 non-officials in the steering committee and if we're only given papers, then we can only comment on the papers. We would not have performed our duty to reflect the views of the public. We can have further discussions later. And I think we have considered your proposal. We have consensus to set up a subcommittee under this panel on long-term housing strategy. Thank you. Mr. Lang Yu-chung. Thank you. Just now the Secretary said that he would listen to the views of legislators. Well, I don't know how sincere the Secretary is. Why did I say that? Just now we were talking about HOS secondary market. You have a policy. A decision has already been made. We have passed a motion with majority, which is quite rare. And you didn't even say that you will consider it. You are just going to go ahead. That is meaningless. You're just here to notify us, not to discuss with us. The steering committee has already met, and a direction has been set down, and the work has been planned out. So you only ask us when you want to. And Mr. Sheck, well, on a rare occasion, asked to have a subcommittee set up. The idea itself is good, but I don't have much faith. We've just started this legislative term, but repeatedly we ask for participation, but the administration says, "Oh, sorry, decision has already been made. We've already decided to go this way." It's not that we don't want to discuss with them. It's just that they have avoided talking to us, and it's been done repeatedly. Why? I don't know how often will our views be discussed. So I'm not talking about the content of the discussion. How sincere is the administration to cooperate with us and to discuss with us issues? And if, more often than not, they notify us, then, in other words, it's just a waste of time. The steering committee has already met once. Well, I may have a view on the composition. There is only one member from political party, and is from DAB. Actually, there are two. Which two? Fred Lee. Fred Lee is not representative of political parties. You said a political party. There is only one, DAB. We did not say any specific member representing the political party. How can we cooperate? How can you show us sincerity? How can we show that we aim at resolving the issues? You tell us that the decision has already been made, and that is the way to go, just like the HOS secondary market. A motion has been endorsed, but you ignored us. So how can we have faith in you? Secretary, I'd like to clarify that in relation to the HOS secondary market, I know members are concerned about the effectiveness, but you won't be able to see the effectiveness before it is implemented, so we need to implement it first. We are fully aware of the concern of members. And in relation to the LTHS, the steering committee has only met once, and no specific issue has been covered. They've only talked about the way to conduct the review. We asked to have the first meeting on this to give you an account of what has happened. There will be further discussion with this panel. Well, I think you can just give us a reason. You can make up loads of reasons not to discuss with us. Whenever you want to refrain, you want to avoid discussion, you come up with a reason. Where is your sincerity? Your time's up. Mr. Vincent Fang. Thank you. I think the LTHS itself is very important. It is something to do with the use of public resources, that is land and public money. And also, well, the views of developers are equally important. I'd like to say to members, well, the first thing you came to us was the HOS secondary market. And we have seen that your stance is very different from ours. We see property prices in the private market being pushed up. then there is nowhere else HOS flats can go. We're talking about less than 2,000 transactions a year, which means that the scheme may not be successful because they are interlinked. So, someone will go to be a PRH tenant. When their situation improves, they will go to HOS, and then they will further move up to the private market. But the private market has completely detached from the HOS market. So how do you expect HOS owners to move up? It is very difficult. Yes, Secretary, you said that we don't know about the effectiveness before it's implemented, but we can forecast that it will be very difficult. And in relation to public housing demand, you have to seriously consider a review. Eligibility of PRH units, a review. People say that once you're a PRH tenant, you will be one forever. So that is the first step. You want to promote circulation for them to move up to HOS. But if tenants see themselves as lifelong tenants, then the administration will have to keep building PRH units. You have to have a review to see if the eligibility has been is proper. Is a stringent vetting process in place and checks? How many people have delivered the flats, has vacated their flats every year? What about inspection? You need to promote circulation from PRH units to HOS and then, in turn, private housing. You have to give time to the Secretary to answer. And Mr. Fang mentioned about circulation. It's exactly what I said. It's the policy direction of the administration to promote, to have in place a property ladder to promote circulation and mobility, eligibility of PRH tenants. If we see the necessity to have a review, we will. Inspections. This is something that the Housing Department has been doing to ensure there is no abuse of public resources. So how many PRH units have been vacated? We have recovered every year, just recovery, excluding those has been transferred. We're talking about on average 7,000 a year. Mr. Fang, is it on the high side or the low side? Because we're talking about a number of years. 7,000, the high side or the low side? 7,000 is a net value, excluding those who has been decanted. Mr. K.K. Fong, we've heard from the CS, from the CE, in addition to the Secretary, that they won't have to wait for all policies to be ready. When one is ready, then they will roll it out from resumption of HOS flats, and now there's 5,000. I remember intake will start in 2016.
If you really take the public's needs as your top consideration, then I haven't heard that you're going to increase the number of PRH flats every year. The ADPL has been suggesting that it should be 35,000, and there are others in the community suggesting 30,000. So between 30 and 35,000, you should work out something in between. So, all right, you're talking about the LTHS today, and if you can also include this in the LTHS, and you will only be increasing the number after the completion of the review, then it's going to be a big problem. We are talking about some 200,000 people on the waiting list. So before the completion of the LTHS review, even if you're not able to increase it up to 35,000, can you increase it to, say, 22,000? Because on previous occasions, I've made the following suggestions. For example, for the existing working sites, all right, you have already started the design that will be completed in 2015, and CY Leung said that he'll be compressing the completion period from 70 to 60 months. So for some of the construction sites, you'll still be able to modify the plan. For example, plot ratio, the number of floors. Instead of 30 floors, you can build 31, 32, or 33 floors. And for every additional floor, you'll be able to have 16 more flats. And also for every block, and you can even have one more block, and of course there will be less open space and also less space for public utilities and facilities, and you can even make use of the rooftop. So there are different ways of increasing the number of units, so you don't have to wait until after the completion of the LTHS review. Alright, if you dare to do it, alright, for PRH flats, can it be increased from 15,000 to 20,000, 22,000, and then after the completion of the LTHS, you can increase it to 30, 35,000? Secretary, well, up till now, the indicators that we have used in doing our planning, we've inherited them from the previous term of government. That's why for the average figure of 15,000 production every year for PRH and also 5,000 HOS flats that was promised by the previous term of government, that is during the next 4 years, they'll be using 17,000 as the target, and if there is more land available, then they'll be increasing the supply by 5,000. That was promised by the previous term of government. And then for the private sector housing, 20,000 units, and that was promised by the previous term government. And now we have embarked on the LTHS review. We would like to conduct a study before we come up with further indicators. Even though I said on different occasions that 15,000 might not be able to meet the need because the demand is ever rising, and therefore we will have to review it. But then for the 5-year plan that has been rolled out, we are still in the first or second year, so I've talked about a number of measures that can be taken. So even if you're able to just increase the number by 10, I think that would be better than none. Can that be done? Chairman, during this term of government, after we have assumed office, actually we have already urged the different departments to compress the procedures and also to try as far as possible to make the best use of any land that is available. Well, any measure that can be adopted to increase the supply will be considered. Next, Michael Tian. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to know this. Well, the administration or the Bureau Director, with regard to interfering with the private property market, well, what is the rationale behind such initiatives? All right, for Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people, as far as my understanding right now is concerned, well, basically we are helping Hong Kong investors if they have a lot of savings, but then they are not able to yield any interest return, and therefore the best thing for them to do is to buy flats, and they do not have to compete with mainland buyers. In other words, they will have a lot of chances to invest in the property market, but then that will not help solve the demand for those who would like to buy their first flats. So I don't think that's a pressing issue. That is to offer the Hong Kong or local investors to buy more flats. But then I think the more pressing issue is for the first-time home buyers. They are now not able to buy their flats. So what are you trying to help? Which group of people? Are you really trying to help those first-time home buyers and they are not able to afford it? If that is the case, then you should have introduced schemes for the first-time home buyers. And in the long run, what should the ratio be? So I don't think everybody will be buying their first homes. And also for the intervention measures. So you're basically imposing some restrictions on those who are selling the flats, and for the Hong Kong property for Hong Kong buyers, they are not allowed to sell their flats within a 30-year period. But then you're actually imposing this requirement or restriction for several decades. So will the administration be able to convince people that that will indeed be a lasting measure? Will you be able to enforce it after several decades, or is it that after several terms you will not be able to enforce it? Are you going to stipulate it in law that everybody will have to observe it for several decades? We will have to consult the Department of Justice to see if it's enforceable. Bureau Director, on the last point about Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people, and also the restriction that they would only be allowed to sell the flats to Hong Kong people within a 30-year period. We hope that in terms of actual enforcement is feasible, and the Lands Department and also the DFJ is now they are now working out the details. We hope that would be enforceable. With regard to Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people, should there be other restrictions or stipulations? Of course, as far as the administration is concerned, we are facing the market. On the whole, we don't want the market to have this impression that the administration is interfering arbitrarily. But then we would very much like to make sure that Hong Kong people will be able to meet their housing needs first. As to whether there needs to be other conditions, would that make the whole policy very cumbersome? Well, we will have to consider that very carefully. But then for the Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people, I think it's better for the Development Bureau to explain it. And the current initiative is to control the demand instead of just controlling the housing demand. But then the thing is the market is now exuberant, and that would also affect the financial stability and other stability. That's why we will have to introduce this measure. Yes, Michael Tien? In fact, what I'd like to know is what the CE pledged that there will be this restriction for a 30-year period, but then what the Bureau Director seems to be suggesting is that different departments are looking into it so that they can come up with very clear stipulations. I can understand that, but then I'd like to know, have you done any calculation? All right, after this term of government, after the government is replaced, what will such term be sustainable? Are you sure that it can be enforced? Because this is about the legal foundation or legal basis. Well, originally I would have allowed you to ask a short question, but then apparently you are asking very lengthy questions. Sorry, time is out. Lee Chek-yen. Thank you, Chairman. All right, after what I've heard from the Bureau Director, I'm concerned that you're actually employing a delaying tactic by reviewing the LTHS, because you're actually dragging your feet in terms of the implementation of some short-term measures, because Hong Kong people are very concerned that it's very difficult for them to get PRH flats. Yes, you said that the average waiting time is 3 years, but then many have waited for 4 years and the queue is getting longer. And also when it comes to the production rate, you referred to the previous government, 15,000 units, and you will have to wait till later before you decide whether or not the quota will be changed. But then people have been waiting earnestly for a long while, and everybody knows that the only way to resolve this problem is to increase supply. So even the LTHS will be looking at the supply, but then before you complete the study, you know you have to increase supply. Why are you still delaying it? And why don't you just decide to increase the supply? Even if you have made that decision, that will take time because you need to do more planning before you can increase the supply. And if you do not decide to increase the supply, and if you have to wait till the completion of the LTHS, I don't know whether the quota will be increased. But then even if you decide to increase, there will be another delay of at least 2 years, because you will only be publishing the consultation document in 2013. So there are two questions. Number one, are you dragging your feet? For those who are earnestly waiting for an allocation of flat, are you actually delaying the time frame? So before the completion of the LTHS, can you increase the supply instead of just insisting on the 15,000 units? Because Eva Chang has been sitting on it for 7 years. So they have insisted on the figure of 15,000. Why can't you increase it right away? Number two, I'm concerned about the problem of subdivided flats. Again, it has to do with supply. with more PRH flats available, then more people from subdivided flats will be able to get housing. In a PRH flats, we actually have 71,100 people living in some 34,800 subdivided flats. You said that industrial buildings can be converted. I don't know when that can be done, but then only very limited supply can be provided by that. So why can't you just increase public housing supply? So that's the second problem. So how are you going to resolve the problem of subdivided tenants or subdivided flat tenants? And also, will you be reviewing this issue of interim housing? Because in Long Bin, the interim housing is so appalling. It's no different from the subdivided flats in the private sector, because the per person space is 3 square meters. But then for PRH flats, the standard is 5 square meters. And for allocation standard is 7 square meters. But then for interim housing, it's only 3 square meters. So, Secretary, will you be prepared to go along with me to one of those flats to see for yourself? So how are you going to resolve that problem? And finally, will you be reintroducing rent control? Because, this is going to be an indefinite wait, because there are always people who have to rent a flat, and then rent is going up, and then every time we might be talking about 20, 30, or even 50% rent increase. So will you be relaunching rent increase or rent control? Because that can be done right away. Secretary. Well, on interim housing, incidentally, I've made arrangement to visit one of those flats, including the one in Long Bin, and also for subdivided flat. Yes, I was in Shamshapur yesterday. I also tried to understand the living condition in the subdivided flats. And also in terms of supply, yes, Mr. Lee was right, in the sense that we do not have to wait until after the completion of the LTHS before we know that we have to increase supply. Yes, we've been doing that comprehensively, but then in my earlier answer, I've already said that as far as the indicator is concerned, since we have already started the review on the LTHS, we should wait until after the review is completed before we can come up with a more comprehensive data or comprehensive picture. And also, actually, we'll be coming up with the consultation document in the middle of next year. And also, for interim housing, for rent control, we have no intention of relaunching it for the time being, but then we'll be monitoring the situation closely. Why is it that you are aware that you have to increase the supply and yet you are not prepared to change the indicator or target? So why is it that you know it, but that you are refusing to do it? All right, given the fact that we are undertaking this review on the LTHS, in the foreseeable future, we would like to look at the demographic structure and also the economic factors and also the demand trend in coming up with such an assessment. And on that basis, we should be coming up with future targets, and I think that would be more pragmatic. All right, only 1 minute left. As Mr. Abraham Sheikh suggested that under the housing panel, we should set up a subcommittee to deal with the LTHS, the long-term housing strategy. I think this suggestion is very constructive because the Deputy Chairman, Mr. K.K. Fong, has also brought it up with me. But then at present, we only have half a minute to go before the end of this meeting, and we only have very few members here. Hence, as this issue, if we were to set up this subcommittee, what's the terms of reference, what's the objective, and how much time are we going to spend on it, and will the administration be cooperating with us, to what extent will it be prepared to do it? That would take time for us to look into it. That's why I like to put it on the agenda for the next meeting, because we have 2 items for the next meeting, and I don't think they are going to take up too much of our time. So as chairman of the panel, I like to suggest that we discuss this issue at the next meeting, instead of just rushing it through this meeting. So are we going to set up a subcommittee on the LTHS under the panel? And I hope that the administration will also give us its views. Yes, Chairman, I agree with your proposal. But then what about discussing the issue of subdivided flats at the next meeting earlier on? I've already responded to that before you arrived. Other members have also raised it. I've been here since the beginning of this meeting. But then, as I've just said, the administration is not ready to discuss the matter with us, because we have discussed with the Secretary on the items for discussion. We hope to discuss that within this year, but then we might not be able to do it at the next meeting because they are not ready with their papers. Chairman, I can provide some supplementary information. Last week, I met with the chairman and deputy chairman on the plan for the coming year. I understand that members would like to discuss the issue of subdivided flats, but then under the LTHS review, we'll be looking into it, and therefore, in due course, as soon as we are ready, we'll be more than happy to come and discuss the matter with members. But then this is indeed a very pressing issue. Yes, I understand that. So can we discuss it as early as possible instead of wait till the completion of your LTHS review? When can we have a timetable? December, January? At least we have to have a timetable.
We have already overrun past the appointed time, and we won't have power or authority. Perhaps in the next panel meeting we will discuss about this establishment or otherwise of the subcommittee. We have to adjourn the meeting. We do have to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you.